Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is a groundbreaking series that dives into the lives of people living in the last frontier. Each episode introduces you to colorful characters from around the state. Funding for Indie Alaska is provided in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company. Catch the latest episodes at alaskapublic.org.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this Halloween, the 31st of October. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather situation, as that could be changing, especially in the west and southwestern parts of Alaska today. More on that in just a minute. But always, you can find information on NOAA Weather Radio, Marine VHF, or our website, weather.gov/Alaska, or by calling 800-472-0391 or following us on many of our social media channels. Here's the big interest right now. High water levels are possible across the Bering Sea coast as we get into Sunday night and Monday. Stronger southwesterly winds are moving a weather system along very quickly through the Bering, and we've kind of color-coded the expected storm surge possibilities here, the potential for higher water than normal as we get into Sunday night and Monday. Some of the highest areas would be inside of eastern Norton Sound, as well as the south-facing coastlines, including areas around Nome and up around the western tip of the Seward Peninsula. Those areas could see as much as 6 to 8 feet above normal astronomical high tide, but many other places are affected by this. And because of this possible surge of water, coastal flood watches are posted, as well as high surf advisories for many parts of west and southwestern Alaska, all the way from Bristol Bay all the way up to Kotzebue Sound. So if you haven't checked your weather conditions locally yet, now's a good time to do that. Here's a look at the hazardous weather situation by your region there, and we've shaded this in warning, watch, and advisory. Watch simply means watch out. There's a potential for some dangerous weather coming your way, and you see that stretching through eastern Norton Sound, as well as the northern parts of the Yukon Delta region. That is a coastal flood watch specifically for those higher than normal surges of water that could reach 6 to 8 feet above normal astronomical high tide. The red shaded areas are not for the coastal floods. That's for snow. That's the other part of this weather system. And in this region across northwestern Alaska, you could see as much as 8 to 16 inches of snow across some of those higher valleys and the higher terrain there leading up to the south-facing Brooks Range. And now as you get into the middle Yukon Valley around Galena, Huslia, and Kaltag, you're looking at lower amounts of snow, but still it looks like you're going to see a generally about half a foot and about 6 inches to maybe as much as 12 inches of snow in many cases, and then about 4 to 7 inches for the areas under a winter weather advisory for the south-facing eastern Brooks Range slopes, all the way through Bettles and down into Tanana. Most of this will be north of Manly Hot Springs as well, but again, we are expecting snow, and this snow will spread eastward through the central interior as we get into Sunday and into Monday. Here's a look at southwestern Alaska, also looking for high surf advisories for the Kuskokwim Delta region around Bethel and outwards, of course, as you get into Sunday night and into Monday. So not to be left out, of course, looking for some normal or unusual rough surf in that region as we get into the end of the weekend tomorrow. Here's a look at the weather system now. You can see low pressure spinning up violently across the western Bering. It was down to about 970 millibars earlier today. The leading edge of this weather maker is moving out toward the Pribilofs very quickly. It's supported by a fast-moving streak in the jet stream around 30,000 feet, and the wind below that is kind of stuck to that fast-moving section of the upper atmosphere. So this is racing across the Bering, and there's going to be a pretty healthy south and westerly fetch out ahead of that. So all of that is pushing the higher than normal surges of water toward the coastline, and will kind of run into the west and northwestern coast there as we get into late tomorrow and again into Monday, on top of producing a pretty good amount of snow there across northwestern Alaska. For the rest of Alaska, things are fairly quiet for southeast. You can see a batch of clouds circulating across the southern parts of southeast, a little bit of rain associated with that. It's been a drier but cooler day for south central, and another wave of clouds is working off the Alaska Peninsula with strong and gusty northwest winds slowing down a little bit. Plenty of clouds across the interior, not a whole lot of precipitation to write home about, but you can see northwestern Alaska already gearing up for snowfall across the western coast with rain across the Seward Peninsula and into eastern Norton Sound and some light rainfall across the YK Delta. Here's the weather system we're watching out across the west, and as that steams across the central and eastern Bering Sea tonight, rain and snow will form in earnest across the Seward Peninsula with periods of heavy snow across north and western slopes of the western Brooks Range, as well as parts of the middle Yukon Valley into the Noatak and Kobuk Valley, specifically Kobuk and Noatak. And then out toward the west, here's the frontal boundary working into the west coast. With that comes a pretty healthy surge of west and southwesterly winds throughout Sunday. High pressure quickly shifts eastward into the western Yukon, and while that'll keep many areas dry across the Copper River Basin, you can see the snow and the mixture moving in across southwestern Alaska. Kodiak still looking at rain. Showers across the southern Bering and rainfall from Nunivak Island to the Pribilofs with a rain and snow mixture across the west coast. It'll predominantly be that mix in the morning with improving weather as far as precipitation goes during the day. By Monday, look for low pressure across the Kotzebue Sound region at 983 millibars, a weaker system across the south, but that's going to add another surge of moisture across south central. So as we get into Monday, you may see periods of rain mixed with snow across south central, but it looks like the predominant pattern for many around Anchorage and the Matanuska and Susitna valleys will be snowfall there as we get into the beginning of the week. Periods of rainfall also across southeastern Alaska with some strong and gusty winds still going into Norton Sound. You can see the tight pressure gradient here, so we'll continue to be watching for the potential for coastal flooding. If you're in eastern Norton Sound, northwestern coastal Alaska, make sure you're watching the weather as we go ahead through tomorrow and again on Monday. Temperatures today were in the 40s and 50s for southeast, 30s and 40s for south central, and teens for most of the interior, with the Arctic coast in the single digits to as warm as 12 around Barrow. Kotzebue Sound, teens, 20s and 30s, 34 in Shishmaref, 38 in Nome, and teens and 20s for most of the lower Yukon Valley. Southwestern Alaska saw temperatures in the lower 30s and 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, with upper 40s for the central and western chain. Overnight low temperatures will stay well below freezing for the interior with dry air in place, but the wet and warmer air coming off the Pacific will hold temperatures in the 30s and 40s for most of the western coast. And for southeast, look for temperatures above freezing with highs tomorrow in the upper 30s to lower 40s. South central in the 30s and 40s with single digits and teens for most of the central and eastern interior. And the Arctic coast is warming up with the west coast back in the 30s and 40s. 38 in Nome, 40 in Bethel, and almost 50 for the Alaska Peninsula and the chain. Flying weather, we expect IFR conditions around that storm and its impacts for the west and northwestern coast, and VFR for the North Slope and most of the Alaska Peninsula. Elsewhere, VFR is expected. And Aktivik Pass and Etigan Pass should turn over to IFR conditions as we go through the daytime tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will also worsen to MVFR throughout the day. Rainy Pass expected to be MVFR for the first day of November. Windy Pass, Isabel Pass, as well as Mentasta Pass all look to be VFR. Tenita Pass expected to be visual. Portage also the same, and Chilcoot and White Pass should be A-OK. Freezing levels show the cold air is retreating somewhat, with warm air aloft working up the west coast. 2, 6, and 8,000 foot lines there across the Bristol Bay region, and you can see a quick gradient there across southeastern Alaska, with icing potential probably forming up across northwestern Alaska tonight and through tomorrow. Most of those higher levels will be below 8,000 feet to above 5,000 feet, and some of that could easily reach occasional moderate with heavy snow in the forecast as well. The jet stream shows the powerful area of wind that's driving several weather systems across the Bering. Wind speeds there up to 150 knots. A brief ridge is formed across the central parts of Alaska that is quickly moving out of the way and also working together to power a very wet weather maker across the Pacific Northwest and Portland. At 9,000 feet, you can see those strong west and southwesterly winds moving ashore. All of this, again, helping to work that weather system into the west coast, specifically Norton Sound and northwestern Alaska. Wind speeds at 9,000 feet as high as 40 to 50 knots. Our ridge retreating, and we're actually moving forward eastward into the southeastern Alaska and the eastern Gulf. And then at 3,000 feet, our levels here showing anywhere from 40 to 60 knots across the central Bering, with a south and westerly wind for the central and western interior. Again, high pressure retreating with northwesterly winds outside the southeastern coast. Turbulence is going to be an issue there, and don't be surprised to see reports of isolated severe across the west as this weather maker is moving in. Below 4,000 feet seems to be where you'll run into the most trouble as we go through your daytime tomorrow, so do be careful, plan ahead, and have an alternative plan as you need it. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back with a look at the sea ice edge and your marine weather here in just a few minutes.
ISMA, the International Snowmobile Manufacturers Association, whose members are Artco, Bombardier, Polaris, and Yamaha, is proud to present Safe Riders. You make snowmobiling safe. Snowmobiling is one of winter's most enjoyable and popular pastimes. The development of superior engineered snowmobiles, the building of a diverse network of trails, and the dedication of club volunteers have all contributed significantly to the expansion of this great sport. As responsible manufacturers, the partners in ISMA have developed the following presentation to assist riders with an orientation of what they might encounter while snowmobiling, how to deal with situations that occur, how to get home safely. The video is also intended for the seasoned sledder. As an experienced rider, you're often looked to for instruction from the novice. Safe Riders can help you help them. From handling tips to recognized hand signals, Safe Riders can only add to your wealth of knowledge and confidence when called upon to assist a new snowmobiler. After all, when it comes to Safe Riders, you make snowmobiling safe. Snowmobiling is like everything else you do. The more you know, the better prepared you are, the better you will perform. For a new rider, the first thing you should do is carefully read and understand all materials provided with your snowmobile. Then take a snowmobile safety course. Please understand, this video is not intended to replace a safety course, but may be used as part of an educational program. A course provides detailed information in classroom and field settings where you can interact and ask questions and get a first-hand demonstration and feel for the curriculum. It is highly recommended for all riders. Your local club or association has information on safety courses. As much as snowmobiling is great fun, if you aren't prepared for the winter elements, it can be very frustrating. Before you even think about your sled, make certain you are personally ready to handle your ride. This should start with your clothing. A good warm suit is a must, preferably one that is windproof. If you're riding at night, you should have reflective materials. Under your suit, always wear layers of clothing. This will allow you to adjust for any temperature changes. Your choice of gloves and boots is an important one. Fingers and toes are always the most susceptible to frostbite. Keeping them warm and dry is critical. Water-resistant boots and quality high thermal rated mitts or gloves are a must for all snowmobilers. There are two types of helmets to choose from, an open face and a full face. The full face offers better protection from the elements when driving. Regardless of which you choose, a helmet must fit snug. To test the fit, have someone try to turn your helmet while it's on your head. If it moves freely or feels loose, it isn't the right fit. Only helmets with DOT or Snell label have been tested and approved. A helmet won't work if it falls off, so always fasten and tighten the chin strap. It only takes a second. A face shield provides protection from the wind, snow, and debris, but fogging can be a problem. You may want to consider a double lens shield or an electric one that works similar to a car's rear window defroster. A face mask can also prevent fogging by working to deflect your warm breath away from your shield. Goggles can also be worn with an open face helmet. Okay, you've taken care of your physical readiness. What about your mindset? Do you know what you need to know? It's always wise to check the weather forecast for temperature and possible storms. Get a map. You should know your route. Is there any open water or thin ice? Have you checked with the locals for conditions? Did you take note of where you can get fuel, food, and shelter? And for any long-distance riding, always leave a copy of your route with a friend or relative and check in regularly. To be legal and avoid problems, make certain you have the proper insurance, registration, permits, and licenses to ride. States and provinces often differ in their requirements. Information is available from government agencies and clubs. To sum up, your mental preparation is quite simple. Know before you go. Thinking ahead can assist with unforeseen circumstances. Carrying a drive belt and spare spark plugs, a toolkit, flashlight, and a tow rope can help with the mechanical needs. A first aid kit, fire starting materials, a compass, a whistle, and high-energy food and water can prove necessary in surviving a serious situation. Many people carry their cellular phones. Bring yours if you have one. Thinking ahead can help you avoid many problems. It's common sense, a big part of being a safe rider. Snowmobiles are great machines, but it's important to remember they are motor vehicles. They're powerful and unique in their operation. So it's very important to get familiar with how they operate and what you need to know to ensure they keep performing. This begins even before you start the machine, with the materials provided by the manufacturer, such as the owner's manual or operator's guide. Carefully read and understand the materials. They're written by the manufacturer who built the snowmobile. It does contain the basic things you need to know to improve your enjoyment in operating a snowmobile. The pre-operation check is something a safe rider does before every ride. Under the hood, make certain your drive belt is in good condition. You're carrying a spare belt as well as spare spark plugs. Then check the fluids and fill them if necessary. Don't forget to secure the hood latches. Check the lights and windshield for cracks and dirt. The idea is see and be seen. Always test the throttle and brake controls for proper tension and operation. Just give them a couple of squeezes. They should return to the same position without sticking. The track should be checked for ice buildup, alignment, and possible tears. We give the handlebars a turn to examine the steering and alignment of the skis. Check the skis for wear. Remember, these checks and any necessary repairs must be done prior to starting the sled. For a quick reference, review the information decals on your snowmobile. Once you're confident that both you and the snowmobile are ready to go, it's time to start up. Your owner's manual or operator's guide will direct you on the type of snowmobile you have and the proper method of starting it. Once started, a safe rider's mindset is respect. Respect for the power of the snowmobile, respect for your limitations, and respect for the environment. Start off by testing the throttle for the power of the acceleration. Hold on and squeeze slowly. Then do the same for the brake. Listen to the engine. If something doesn't sound right, have it checked. It's too late when you're out on your snowmobile. Before you leave, make sure all your systems are functioning, including both headlight beams, the tail light, the brake light, and the emergency shut-off switch. It's also a good idea to check your ski runners to make sure your sled will respond to the steering. You've checked your sled and prepared yourself, and there's only one thing left to do. Get comfortable and ride safely. As a snowmobiler, there are a few things that are deemed the rules of riding. They're mostly common sense, but experience tells us they often get overlooked. Many rules are similar to driving a car. The first being, don't drink and drive. Alcohol has been proven to distort your depth perception, impair your reaction time and coordination, and impair your natural sense of caution. Operation under the influence has unfortunately been proven to lead to fatalities all too often. For the safety of everyone, zero tolerance, alcohol-free is the only right way to ride. Statistics clearly show that alcohol is a contributing factor in many of the accidents and fatalities of both new and experienced riders, as well as innocent victims. When stopping at a rest area or for the night, remember not to leave your keys in an unattended snowmobile. It presents an invitation to thieves and unknowledgeable riders of all ages. Racing should be left to the racetracks, radar runs, and organized race events. Public snowmobile trails require responsible riding. The faster you go, the less time you have to react to a situation, and the more braking time is required to stop, especially considering you're riding on ice and snow. When riding, always stay to the right of the trail and leave room for oncoming traffic on the left. Be sure to keep sufficient distance between you and the sled in front. You never know when a circumstance will arise that requires you to slow down or stop. Fallen trees, wildlife, or a groomer may be just around the bend, so stay alert, look ahead, watch for signs, and keep your distance. When riding in a group, stay with the leader, but never pass the leader, and know where the person is behind you. If you're riding in a group, for greater visibility, install a mirror to help keep an eye on the person behind you. Always keep a safe distance and keep your place in line. Snowmobilers have a series of hand signals that are used on the trails to communicate with each other. It's critical to know them and use them correctly. Pointing the left arm straight out indicates a left turn. Left arm out, bent at the elbow, with forearm raised at a 90-degree angle, signals a right turn. Left arm out and forearm angled down to the ground advises to slow down and proceed with caution. Left arm raised straight up indicates you are stopping. And when stopping on the trail, pull over to the extreme right of the trail. Always dismount on the right to avoid traffic coming from behind. Never stop on a curve or a hill. Our beautiful trail systems and riding areas exist because dedicated snowmobilers have worked with landowners to obtain easements for the enjoyment of other snowmobilers. Don't trespass. Stick to the trails and designated riding areas. They are legal, safer, and lead to great destinations. Off-trail riding in non-designated areas could present problems with access privileges from property owners. Trails and riding areas could be closed if you trespass. Fences represent a serious threat, and unseen wires can cause serious accidents. Although an active railroad line is inviting as a trail, it is not a trail and poses great danger for those who ride them. Trails are most common in the central and eastern region of North America. The western and mountain regions offer trails with large expanses of designated riding areas. Be a safe rider. Stick to the trails and safe riding areas. You make snowmobiling safe.
And cold and snow is coming, of course, especially for northwestern Alaska, where ice is forming inside of Kotzebue Sound. But with the southwesterly winds coming through, ice will be changing in Kotzebue Sound and, of course, in Norton Sound. But for the Beaufort Seacoast, look for the ice to continue to expand and westward into the Chukchi Sea in the coming days. As we look at southeast, look for north and westerly winds to be a little bit stronger tomorrow across the Lynn Canal, with higher gusts possible there. Slower wind speeds as you head further south, with a northwesterly flow inside the Clarence Strait with a 3-foot sea. Northerlies coming down the outer coast as well, about 20 to 30 knots, with seas ranging between 7 to 9 feet. By Monday, an onshore push is coming with winds down to 20 to 25 knots. Look for 11-foot seas outside of the Dixon entrance and 2 to 3-foot seas on the inside. Wind speeds there about 10 to 15 knots. For south central, a variable wind inside of Cook Inlet, eventually becoming more southerly with time. Northwesterlies coming across the Barrens at 20 to 35 knots, and northerlies working their way out of Prince William Sound and off the higher train. That could mean some higher gusts outside of the Copper River Basin, and 25 knots with a 7-foot sea in the northern Gulf. That becomes more of a south and westerly flow for many areas in the western Gulf tomorrow. 20 to 30 knot wind will produce about 8 to 9-foot seas across the west, with that south and westerly wind winning out all the way from Shelikof to the western Barrens and up Cook Inlet, about 10 to 20 knots, with a light and variable flow continuing inside of Prince William Sound, but northwesterlies outside of that at 30 knots with a 10-foot sea. For the Alaska Peninsula, southwesterlies at 30 to 35 knots, 11 to 12-foot seas in the Pacific, and 9 to 13-foot seas down the Bering Sea coast for Sunday. By Monday, look for a southerly flow to develop, with stronger winds developing south of Sand Point, King Cove, and out around False Pass. That could produce 18-foot seas by Monday afternoon. Southwesterlies into Shelikof Strait, Castle Cape, and Chignik with a 10-foot sea, and 9 to 13-foot seas continue across the Bering Sea coast and Bristol Bay. For Sunday in the Aleutians, 30 to 35 knot winds for most of the areas along the Bering Sea coast, 25 to 35 across the Pacific, with 13-foot seas across the southern coastlines, but southwesterlies building quickly across the regions from Kiska to Attu at 40 knots with 18 to 22-foot seas on Sunday. By Monday, winds are diminishing in most areas, with a west to northwesterly shift taking place west of Nikolsky at 20 to 35, at 14 to 10-foot seas out across the west, and seas are diminishing north of Unalaska but becoming northeasterly with a wave of low pressure working through. Southwesterly south of Unalaska and Nikolsky, 17-foot seas south of the islands there. As we get into the west coast, again, this is the area to focus in. A west and southwesterly flow will be picking up through the daytime tomorrow. Look out towards St. Matthew, 22-foot seas there. This fetch of southwesterlies will continue strengthening as we get into Monday, and you'll notice the winds come up to 30 to 40 knots across the YK Delta, the northern Yukon, and into Norton Sound and the western tip of the Seward Peninsula. This could produce 12 to 18-foot seas offshore. Southwesterlies around St. Paul and St. George, and westerlies diminish somewhat around St. Matthew, but seas are still holding high around 19 feet or so. And again, coastal flood watches are posted for many areas, including eastern Norton Sound, as we get into Sunday and Monday. For the Arctic coast, east and southeasterly winds over the Beaufort Sea ice, southwesterlies blowing offshore for the Chukchi Seacoast with 4 to 7 foot seas there from Point Lay to Point Hope at 20 to 25 knots. For Monday, more of a southerly flow, and this is going to probably move some of that ice around a little bit over the next couple days. Easterlies over the ice for the Beaufort at 20 to 25 knots and southeasterlies outside of Kotzebue Sound. Let's look at your marine weather. Let's recap what's going on. A strong storm is working across the Bering. It's at around 970 millibars. As we go through tonight, it'll probably rise just a little bit to around 980 millibars. It's a fast mover. And out ahead of that, we have southwesterly winds that are going to build in pretty quickly. It's already snowing across northwestern Alaska, where winter storm warnings are posted. Some places there could see well over a foot of snow, maybe a foot and a half, for the Noatak and Kobuk valleys. Watch for that to continue throughout the daytime tomorrow with stronger westerly winds moving in. That could push a surge into eastern Norton Sound, all the way from Tin City and the south-facing coastlines of the Seward Peninsula, as well as areas along the YK Delta, where a high surf advisory is posted for the Kuskokwim Delta. North of that, coastal flood watches are posted there. Watch for the weather to continue to be rough as we head into Monday, with snow still flying, especially across the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range and into the central interior and mainly north of Manly Hot Springs. Accumulating snow will be possible. Some places there under a winter weather advisory for 4 to 7 inches, and rain and snow is moving back to south central with rain in southeast by Monday. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.